something to say finally. No, I pretty well always know my ending. Like I knew that the end of Deadly Dews, because there's a shoe theme in it, would end up with a fight in a shoe closet. And just as Trashing the Trailer, the one that I'm working on now, it has a beginning that starts in a makeup trailer where the makeup artist falls dead on top of poor Lulu, who's being made up for her TV series. And I know that it ends with in the name of the book is Trashing the Trailer, I know that it ends with a slam-bang, drag-out fight in a makeup trailer on the edge of a cliff. And the makeup trailer is trashed, and that's why the book's called Trashing the Trailer. So I have the beginning, I have the end, I have all sorts of great stuff in between, including that funny scene I read at the humorous readings the other day, if anybody was there, about Lulu disguising herself as a nun with the biker. So I know the ending.
The first thing I ever wrote, wasn't the first thing published, was The Seventh Sword. And that just started with me sitting down and starting to write and thinking, geez, this is fun. So I kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. As I say, got up to about 160,000 words, and I finally tied it off. It really didn't work too well. So I rewrote it, and it eventually became a trilogy, but the ending came out of the story, out of experience, I guess. I finally did find a great ending, and went back and wrote it in from all the way through. And I've had characters insist on changing the ending. It doesn't happen very often. I like to have the ending before I start. And if you've read The Lord of the Firelands, King Ambrose dies rather unexpectedly. Surprised the hell out of me. But Radgar, who's the best character I ever thought up, just absolutely said, this is my book, and this is how it should end. And I said, but you ruined the whole series. He said, that's your problem. And it worked beautifully.
For those of you who are in my writers group, I apologize, but I have to tell this story again. When I was a noob, total noob, I had one book out, and I was at my very first Dragon Con, and I was placed on a writing panel with Robert Jordan. And okay, so I'm Tor's little flea, who they've just adopted, and is like nice little flea. And Robert Jordan, of course, practically owns Tor.
He was married to his editor. I just like to point that out. Not just a little bit of bitterness.
And we had this discussion in this writing panel about characters doing exactly what Dave was talking about, because I would imagine that any of you out there who are writing have discovered that characters surprise us. It's this marvelous, marvelous moment in the process of creating a book and creating characters when they start acting on their own and doing things you don't expect and taking over the story just a little bit. And it's a marvelous feeling. I love it. It's the best thing about writing. And we were talking about this, and Robert Jordan was insisting that this does not happen, that if this does happen, you're doing it wrong. Because you are the god of your universe, and you control everything. And if your characters are surprising you, then there is something wrong with your characters. And there were two other people on the panel, and they had the good sense to kind of just, but not me. So we start going back and forth, and finally, in a moment of pique and idiocy, I go, if you write them like puppets, they'll read like puppets. And that was what I did right after. It was like, ugh. In my entire career, all like 3 months of it passed before my eyes. He was very gracious and he forgave me. But the point is, to answer your question, my endings are vague in my head because I have to leave room for my character to surprise me. But I know the general events. I know where it's headed. I know how it's going to end. I just don't know how I'm going to get there. And so, again, in the Forland series, the climactic battle in Weavers of War, which is one of the best bits of writing I've ever done, I had no idea who was going to survive the battle and who didn't. And I was bringing tears to my own eyes again and again because I was going, oh, shit, I have to kill him. Oh, she's dead. And it was because it was just happening the way it was happening.
Isn't easy being God.
Yeah, those creeps just have that independent streak, don't they? When the first book that I sold on spec, that's when you write the book, they buy the book before you write it, was actually Dragon Blood. I finished Dragon Bones, and as I was bringing it to a close, I thought, oh, there's another book in here. And I called my agent and I said, there's another book in here. And she said, oh, for heaven's sake, call your editor and let her know that before they look at it. So I hadn't sold it to them yet. So I called Ann Sowards, who is my editor, and I said, this book that has too much potential drama to leave it here. I mean, I've got a king to kill and, you know, all of these wonderful things. And she said, well, write it up. And that was my first on spec. And so I sat down and I wrote the synopsis. And, you know, if I could write a synopsis, I'd be a short story writer. Okay? I'm horrible. I cannot write a synopsis to save my soul. So at the very end of it, I wrote it. She said, well, you have to have a beginning, middle, and end so that I can sell it to the bean counters. Okay, so I wrote the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then at the bottom of the end, I said, and if it really ends this way, it will be a really crappy book. And I sent that to Anne, and they bought it anyway. And Raven Strike and Raven Shadow I sold together, and basically said exactly the same thing. This is what I have in mind. This is the first book. And actually, this one was supposed to be a trilogy. This is the first book, this is the second book, this is the third book. And they wrote back to me and said, you know, we'd like it better if you kind of split that second book up. And that is why there's an ungodly amount of characters in the second book. Because it was supposed to be 2 books, and I would have this set of characters, kill them all off, and then have this set of characters for the third book. But yeah, my endings are really vague because I need to allow for things to happen. They're not quite as vague anymore as they used to be. But for instance, the end of Iron Kiss took me totally by surprise. The end of Dragon Bones took me totally by surprise. I had no idea what I was going to do with all these people until they were on the boat. If you read the book, until they were on the boat, and I went, oh my gosh, he's gonna die. If I kill one of the best characters in the book, at the end of the book, nobody who likes my books will ever read me again. Because I'm a happy bunny, right? And you do a tragic ending, at the end of your Happy Bunny book, and all your Happy Bunny fans go, oh, that sucked, and they just don't pick it up again. So, yeah.
Worked for George R.R. Martin.
I know, but his readers expect that.
Nobody described George as a happy bunny.
Well, I was going to ask how much of a role an outline plays, but I think you've already kind of answered that. Unless there's something more you want to say about how an outline will actually affect your ability to get past that muddle in the middle.
Well, you know, outline. Sorry.
No, go.
Okay, outlines either work for you or they don't.
Outlines either work for you or they don't. And as a writer, whatever works for you, do. You know, do that. I tried writing a book from an outline. It actually took me longer to write the outline than it took me to write the book. And so I've never tried that again. Because once I knew what the ending was, I didn't want to do it anymore. Half of my fun of writing a book is to see what happens. And if I already know, then there's no point to write the book. And that was really hard, so I don't do that anymore. But good outliners do a really fantastic job, and a good pantser does a really fantastic job. And if you screw up, then you screw up in different ways, depending on whether you're an outliner or a pantser. I don't know.
I don't know if an outline will help you in little Doldrums.
To me, dealing with a story from conception to the to writing the final page, and this is going to sound like a really weird analogy, but stick with me. It's like drinking a bottle of soda pop. And you want to finish that bottle of soda pop before all the fizz is gone. And for me, every time I talk about a book while it's in progress, every time I do an outline for a book or write a synopsis for a book, I'm opening the bottle and I'm letting out a little more fizz. And so if I overdo it, if I over-outline or I over-talk the novel, there's not enough fizz to get me to the end of the book. And the book ends up, and the analogy works, the book ends up being flat. And so what I find is people who are pantsers versus people who are outliners, it's really one continuum. It's not a dichotomy. And it's just a matter of where your threshold of losing fizz lies on that spectrum.
quote a couple of others. This is secondhand. I'm told George R.R. Martin says you're either a gardener or an architect. And I think that's a fairly good analogy. I'm personally a gardener. I can't write outlines. If I work out the outline, I'd lose interest in writing the story. And Anne McCaffrey said that she could never write outlines. She told me she just, when they wanted something, she would begin, at the opening of the book, the situation is. And she described the opening. And of course, they all knew she could write a good story, so that would be good enough for her. It wouldn't work for a beginner. But she could say, this is the opening, this is the ending, and we'll find our way through the wilderness in between. Hope for the best.
How about you? Let's hear. Is that contributing to why you can't?
Me? You're
Yeah.
talking to me.
Are you outlined? Do you think that's contributed to your model?
You know, actually, these comments are so helpful because I think that might be, these comments are so helpful because I think that might be part of my model. Because I also do a lot of screenwriting, I'm trained to have this whiteboard and the acts divided and all that. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I'm like having problems because I'm not precise enough. So I bought 4 whiteboards at Walmart, and I've color-coded them and all that. And, I've been thinking maybe I should just put those whiteboards away, which I have already anyway.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I should just do what you suggested, Dave, of, just reading it again. I put it aside for a little while, working on other things. Maybe I should just read it again and not have all those plot points in mind. Maybe just go through and maybe look at what's driving the character. Like I did take a good second run at it from the point of view of Lulu. What is Lulu learning in this book? I mean, I already have the theme of trashing the trailer, you don't trash your work, you don't trash other people, and Lulu learns not to trash herself or her former celebrity as the star of the most successful dog food commercial in North America, which had the theme of doggy, doggy, bow, wow. And so that has been the bane of her existence, and she has to learn in this book to get past that and to be grateful for the money she made from it. So, all of the comments from all of you have been so helpful because it's sort of making me think, okay, maybe this week I can go home and just take another approach and maybe chuck this whole outline thing, which is driving me batty.